Hello everybody, here we are today and we're going to be doing a video over whether or not the Nashville Predators could be a Stanley Cup playoff team. Now before we start, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get into it. So yeah, obviously with it being close to Christmas time, things are really chaotic in the house right now. So just doing a video out in my car talking about where Nashville stands at the moment for playoff possibility. Now the Predators are a team that's been pretty consistent when it comes to making the playoffs, get into the Stanley Cup playoffs and just, have a chance to try to get there and win the cup. Now, have they won the Stanley Cup in that time? No, they haven't. And last year actually marked the first time since the 2013-14 season we didn't see Nashville in the playoffs, as they finished with 92 points. Not a terrible year, but not good enough to keep that playoff streak alive. And it's got a lot of people talking about this year, going into the year, would this be just a continuation of not making the playoffs as they try to retool or rebuild their roster? And I think a lot of that ties into the fact that the only GM they had ever known in David Poile had basically stepped down from the role. He'd been there since the franchise's inception and played, again, the biggest role possible for anybody in the league in that time for one organization, making all these decisions that, for the most part, I think did impact Nashville in a positive way. I mean, I know there's obviously going to be decisions along the way where you say, oh, I don't really necessarily agree with it, but to have a young franchise like this, to be able to get it to be a regular for the playoffs for big stretches, I guess is a good thing. And then we would see former Preds head coach Barry Trotz take over for him. He has been a head coach for a long time in the NHL, but had never been a NHL GM. So he's stepping into this role. Obviously, Poile's still there as an advisor, so that's a good thing. But I think with Barry, a lot of questions were talked about, is he making decisions to make this team competitive or not? Because there would be some moves that you would make and say, okay, well, they're trying to at least retool, if not rebuild, but then he'd go out and he'd give these big contracts or just contracts in general to older players like O'Reilly to bring them on in. And it was weird because you said, what is this team going to do? Personally, I didn't have high expectations for Nashville going into the season. I feel like since the channel started, I haven't been a guy that's really hyped up the Preds. They were, to me, a team that was going to be good enough to get a wild card spot at best and then not be able to do a whole lot in that time. So having seen them miss the playoffs last year and then seeing kind of some of the decisions they made, I said, I don't see them being a playoff team, but here we are right now, and they are currently in the first wild card spot. And the thing is, it's not exactly like they are getting knocked out of the wild card spot every night where they're just in and out with some other teams that are, battling for a position in the playoffs. In fact, they are a team that's got just a little bit of a cushion over some other clubs, and they have been able to stay in that first wild card spot for a little bit now. They have done that thanks in part to a really good run where, especially over their last 10 games, they are 8-2, and over their last 17 games, they have 13 wins, which is obviously a really good thing there. But despite them being a team that is in the first wildcard spot, and again, they have a little bit of that cushion, MoneyPuck.com only gives them a 31.1% chance of making the playoffs. So I guess let's look at this and see maybe why that could be, and then I guess what we expect for them by the end of the year. Well, I think the big thing here is when you look at the Predators, they don't look like a terrific team in general. They are a team that doesn't have some 5-on-5 numbers that are electric. They are not a dominant team on the power play and on the PK. And for a lot of people, including myself, I said if this team is going to be a playoff team this season, they're going to either go Jussi Saros to have another big year. Last year, Saros had a really good season, and Nashville still came up short. So clearly, they're going to have a big year from him in order to go to the playoffs. Right now, it's not really looking like it's the case. Now, recently, Saros has had a good stretch over his 5 or 6 games. Just a really good save percentage. His numbers look good, and that's great. However, it is kind of interesting to see the fact that Nashville is able to be in this playoff spot without him having a Vezina caliber season because, again, that was kind of the expectation. I will say, are there a lot of reasons why people are shy on them? Yes, again, those 5-on-5 numbers, they're not a dominant team, in multiple areas where you'd like to see them be a dominant team. However, it's just one of those deals where you knew this was not going to be a team that would go out and win the President's Trophy this year. They were going to have to scrap and fight and claw their way into the playoffs. Right now, I think the biggest concern are a couple things. The fact that looking at their last 17 games, and out of all those wins that they've been able to get, 8 of those have been one-score games, and out of their top 4 point producers this season, only one is below 30 years old, that being Philip Forsberg. And I feel like I'm crazy because Forsberg seems a lot older. Maybe it just feels like he's been around the league a lot longer and they could be part of it. But they're relying on an older group. They're not playing particularly dominant hockey, but boy, are they ever winning close games. And I will say, that doesn't just feel like Nashville hockey right there? I know I'm a guy that likes to dig a little bit deeper and look at some things in a lot of videos. I try to do that. But I feel like I'm kind of playing into this easy narrative. And this is a video where I just kind of threw it together at lunch yesterday during work and did my notes. And I'm like, boy, doesn't it feel like Nashville hockey? Not a particularly star-studded roster. Not going to have a guy that's going to go out there and compete for, the most points in the league. But they're going to go out there, they're going to keep games close, and they're going to win those games, and they are going to put themselves in a great position to be in the playoff conversation. So I feel like that's where Nashville is at right now. Are they sustainable? I think that's up for a debate because, again, too, looking at all those games that were one-score games they were able to win, and the fact that they have like 13 wins over their last 17 games, again, that is really helping them stay afloat in this playoff push. Remains to be seen, and there are other teams out there on the hunt trying to surpass them. And I think the bad thing for them is a lot of these teams that are right there in the mix as well are right there for the taking to possibly either get there or move past them. The Coyotes are a team that's been up and down. They've had some really good moments. They are currently in the second wild card spot, I believe, but they've been able to put together a win streak. And the other teams that are behind Nashville right now are also looking pretty good. Edmonton is coming off of an 8-game win streak not that long ago. Minnesota's looked pretty good. In fact, both of them over their past 10 games are 7-3. I believe at the time of recording this, Calgary's won 3 games in a row. So Nashville certainly does have a lot to worry about. Out of all of those teams, I probably would be more concerned about somebody like Edmonton, maybe Minnesota. Arizona, I'm not really sure. I said a couple weeks back ago in a video I did for them that I wasn't sure they could put together a full season, as they had some young guys that were developing and some old guys that were really going to have to play a lot of minutes for them. But at the same time, too, I guess you never really know. I will say out of this whole bunch, Edmonton is the team that scares me the most, just because we know how good their offense can be, and we know that with some of their defensemen, they're able to produce offensively as well. So I'd say watch out for the Oilers, but I guess in the good sense, too, you're in a situation where as long as you're one of the last 2 wild cards, it doesn't really matter. You make it to the playoffs. So for Nashville, are they dedicated to holding this first wild card spot? They'd probably like to keep it, maybe even move up within their division. But at the same time, you could probably say they'd be fine making the playoffs again, regardless of whether or not that is the first or second wild card team. So will Nashville make the playoffs? I don't really have an answer one way or the other right now. I'm leaning towards no. But again, the Predators are a team that's been able to be in the thick of it for a while. And I know some other teams like Minnesota, they've got their own stuff to worry about right now. And I do think that if Saros continues to play well like he has in recent games, and they are able to string together some wins, they're in a good situation where they should make the playoffs. So I'm going to leave it about 50-50 now. I don't really have a great answer because I'm not Money Puck where they've got all these simulations they can do and say, oh, it's 31.1%. I know that they've played more games than a couple of teams below them, so the gap that they've built, that cushion, isn't necessarily a lock. But at the same time, too, I do think that with this hot run they've been able to be on, if they could just not have a really bad stretch, they would set themselves up really nice to make the playoffs and surprise a lot of people, including myself, as I thought they would be out of it. Now, did I think they were going to be like a rebuilding team where they were bottom 4 in the league? No, I didn't. So anyway, though, what are your thoughts on the Nashville Predators? Do you think that they will make the playoffs? And if they don't, what do you think the direction they should take? What do you think Barry Trotz should do? And how much of a factor do you feel like Barry Trotz's decisions have been on whether or not they make the playoffs this season? Let me know all that down below. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you love hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.